So what are we actually going to build here? Well, let's get into it. First, a higher level vision for the project. We're going to be Android first. I think the part of that is certainly that I'm an Android developer. I have been for the last 10 years, and it's what I know really well, and I think I have a lot to offer. iOS certainly has its advantages in the mobile space, but there's a lot more content out there about iOS development. But really, I think the thing I'm most excited about is the Kotlin multi-platform project, and in fact, a renewed focus on Kotlin multi-platform mobile, aimed at mobile devices specifically, making it possible to develop for Android, iOS at the same time, as well as JavaScript is sort of a slightly different focus, and then Kotlin for the desktop, Java for the desktop as well has always been an option. So, Kotlin is a great language. It is a JVM language, which is the Java virtual machine. It runs on the same stack as Java, and any Java library you're going to be able to use from Kotlin very easily, which is great. Kotlin multi-platform in particular, and also there's another project called Zipline from the guys at Square who do great Android work, which is sort of aimed at shipping JavaScript to native clients to execute remotely. And in fact, their mission is to move even past JavaScript and also support running all kinds of runtime interpretable code. I think that would include Python. I don't really know this strongly, but on a mobile client, and that is a Kotlin multi-platform compatible stack as well. So I think the Kotlin ecosystem is just a really exciting place right now. The obvious sort of competitor to beat in this space is React Native, which code is written in JavaScript, TypeScript, and has had a lot of success, and is certainly the giant in the room right now when it comes to mobile development. And I actually do intend to explore a certain amount of that at some point in this project, to sort of compare and contrast the two stacks. But really just starting from the language, Kotlin versus JavaScript, Kotlin, even Java, which is no real relationship to JavaScript, in terms of, they share some similarities in terms of language structure from the very early days, but really in terms of runtime and even philosophy and capabilities, they're very different ecosystems. And Java is, in many ways, they represent sort of opposite poles of programming language philosophies. JavaScript has always thrived off being able to execute very flexibly, and I think that's in part because of its nature as sort of a browser scripting language, where it was being run in an enormous number of different environments, different browsers, different code, different, well, there's all kinds of different reasons. I'm not a JavaScript expert, so I'm take my word too strongly on this, but I've written enough JavaScript to know that, and even TypeScript, which attempts to add typing. It's one of the biggest differences between the Java family of languages and the JavaScript family of languages. Java's going to be very strictly typed, whereas JavaScript is very loosely typed. It's one of those things that every JavaScript developer needs to learn how to treat numbers, and how an integer essentially isn't a thing in JavaScript. If you want a round integer, you have to jump through all kinds of hoops. Java, on the other hand, every variable you interact with, you know exactly what type it is, and what the contract is for how that's supposed to behave. And Java also is a language which is designed to run in a variety of different environments. This was important in the early web, and we used to have Java web applications. Client-side applications were more popular, sort of in the early web days. But the fact that JavaScript is bundled natively with the web browser and executes within the page has really given it dominance in the web application world since at least Web 2.0 was sort of the JavaScript revolution, where Ajax was what we call the original asynchronous JavaScript. Could update the page as you were browsing without refreshing. This was a huge change when it released. And I'm going pretty deep on this topic, which I didn't really plan to, but I think we'll talk about this a lot more, and maybe I'll do a more prepared treatment on the subject. But Kotlin is in the Java family, and is the primary language for Android development these days. And I think, having been a Java developer for most of my career, and having spent the last year or two writing a lot of Kotlin, it is an incredible improvement. It takes everything that was great about Java and simplifies almost everything that was a pain about Java. It really is a very beautiful language to work in, and it is strongly typed like Java, but not as verbose. If the compiler or IDE is able to infer the type of a variable, you don't have to state it explicitly. So if you say, val string equals, and the string literal, val is not going to be a string. But if you try to assign an integer to it, it's going to complain unless there is an any type, which can be anything, and you can use an any typed variable, but you then can't interact with it in a way that assumes it's a string or an integer, or it's going to say, hey, we don't know that this is a string or an integer, and throw an error at compile time and when you're writing your code, which is just such an advantage. The bigger and more complex and more widely shared your library becomes, the more obvious the extra, I made this argument even as a Java developer that it was worth it. And now in the Kotlin world, where a lot of the sort of optimizations around the edges have been made to make things a lot less, a lot of the criticisms of Java would be it was a lot of boilerplate and very verbose, and you'd have to write out all these long variable names. You don't have to write them out usually, because that IDE, or integrated development environment is what you program in the Java world, as opposed to, I will often edit files in Vim. I'm a Vimmer, but you typically use, when you're doing Android development, you use Android Studio, which is based in IntelliJ, who are the creators of Kotlin as well. And really excited to be based in that. And Kotlin multi-platform will allow you to take Kotlin code and create actually Objective-C code, so not Swift, which is the latest, but compatible, and you can write your iOS application in Swift, and then access these Objective-C libraries that get generated, and also create JavaScript. So you can share code between these different platforms, and that's one of the things I'm really excited to explore and make a foundation of the work here. This includes a shared code base between the client and server, which is something that I'm just incredibly excited for. I think one of the parts of application engineering that I've always been dissatisfied is the relationship between even how most companies talk about engineers. They talk about a mobile engineer and a back-end engineer. And typically the mobile and the back-end engineer interact across the mobile network, which I think is not the right way to even structure that relationship. And I have resisted being called a mobile engineer for my entire time, even an Android engineer I don't like. I use the term application engineer, meaning my focus is on integrating a variety of services and components, maybe created by many different people across many different places, into a single user-facing application. And my deliverable is that user-facing feature application. I judge my success based on the quality of that end user experience. Very often, and it's easy to see how this can be confused with the front-end engineering, certainly front-end engineering, whether it's web front-end or mobile front-end, is a piece of the work that almost universally falls under application engineers' purview, but it really isn't even the hard part, and it sort of misses the complexity of the job. So, I'm a little weird about some of these terms. I apologize if you find that really pedantic. I think it's important, and that's sort of a big topic of what I'm trying to deliver here, is a different way to think about these things. So I'm actually going to consider within this architecture the not only the native client code, but at least the first stop in the server is sort of under our domain, and the entire mobile network gap, which is a big part of engineering for a distributed mobile system, is managing information across that gap. And a big problem with a lot of the applications I've worked with, a big challenge for us at Uber that I spent countless hours working with people on the other side of that gap so that we could come to a common understanding. Really, I expect engineers who are trained in my sort of modality here, which I'm going to call application engineering, I think, to include that mobile networking piece as certainly something that we are responsible for delivering on. And then at that sort of gateway on the other side now, you're in the data center, right? You're within the the domain of the infrastructure engineer, and I think that's where the conversation between a application engineer and an engineer who's focused on a particular backend service, backend engineer is that's where I would say the backend engineer's responsibility should start. And how that gateway service is deployed is certainly a place where the two sides meet, but the logic and the how network sockets are connected and disconnected and what happens during these times and all of these things is something that absolutely we need to be caring about. And we're going to have my goal is to have the code for both the mobile client and the server. We can call it the gateway until we find a better term for it. I think that's for the server gateway, or yeah, there's a couple of terms we could use to describe that, but we can I think refer to it as the gateway for now. We'll be considering all of that within our domain, and hopefully lives in the same code base and is sharing a lot of code. So the network requests and responses, there's no need to duplicate those, or when you make a change to one, there's only a single place to make that change and deal with the corresponding changes that are required on the back end. We can land that all in a single commit and version bump, and that's all going to, I think, simplify a lot of things for us. That's the idea, at least. So, yeah, that's the big piece of the technical vision. We'll be building the Android front end in Jetpack Compose, which is the modern Android that I've spent the last year working in and think is lovely. And certainly we'll be spending a lot of time focusing on the Android code and how that interacts with the Kotlin multi-platform code, how the client and server are going to talk to each other eventually when we have such a thing, which isn't on the short-term roadmap per se, but we'll get it. Let's get into that. But some other things I like to build features first and then refactor reusable libraries from that core code base. So, I talked about building an application framework that is going to sort of emerge naturally over the course of this project, and isn't really, I don't consider it to be a distinct thing so much as just how we will build. We've talked a little bit about AV, but just for the sake of this video, I think audio-video content creation is going to be the core feature set that we're going to try to support well and make it easy for you to set up apps that do audio-video content creation. And the developer platform is also going to be a first-class citizen here, meaning if you want, as we go, certainly as we get to like the major releases, I want to make sure that someone else who wants to onboard and start working with the environment and tools that I'm creating has a clear roadmap to do that. Oops. Version 1, the MVP, which I would like to get out in Q4 this year, is intentionally relatively simple, but I think will be an interesting milestone to hit and set us up for some of the deeper work next year. Display a list of these stand-up videos pulled from YouTube. There's kind of a hidden killer feature here where right now it isn't really possible to subscribe to a YouTube playlist. So what my hope is that I can, that's how I implement this under the hood, is I have all of my stand-up videos organized as a YouTube playlist right now. There isn't really a way to subscribe to that, which I was disappointed by, and Googling around, it seems like other people are also disappointed by this. So This could be kind of a really cool uh, um thing that we could, extract this as an API, as a library feature, um, and looking forward to hopefully uh, providing some value that way. Um, so that'll be the first sort of version that I target is just pulling, YouTube API integration, pulling the playlists, getting all of the list of videos in that playlist. Um, the second version will be to post a video from your gallery to Twitter or YouTube. This will have a Twitter API integration. It's going to be a little bit until we're better than the stock recording app, based on my experience working with the recording. And I don't want to put that on the immediate path to success here. I don't think it's required. I think we can simply record using the native tools that I've been using. Posting is one thing that has been a pain already. And I think it's something that we're going to need long term. And, maybe scheduling to post when you're connected to Wi Fi, restarting posts if they fail for whatever reason, which seems to happen a lot. Doing this on Twitter and YouTube at the same time is something that I'm doing manually right now, and it's kind of a pain. So yeah, I think there's some cool features we can build there, and then a third feature that makes a lot of sense to build is notifications on new videos. Gonna have to figure out exactly how to do this. I don't have a technical plan. I don't want to have much of a backend service for it, so that typically the backend service kicks off these notifications. So I'll have to figure out some plan for that, which is why I haven't kind of set out on its own. Yeah, I think once we have these sort of three features, maybe we could even skip the posting if that turns out to not be that as simple as I hope it to be. But I'm hoping that we can get those three features in before we publish the app to the Play Store. And that, hopefully we can get these couple of things done in the next month or two, I would say. And then from there, I'd like to refactor to include Kotlin multi-platform and to be able to do these same things from the desktop. So I've been doing the stand-up videos from mobile, and that's my intention, is that those be delivered from the mobile app. These longer videos I've been recording on my desktop, on my laptop. And I think that's a great place to start with the Kotlin multi-platform integration. And the other thing that I've noticed that's going to become an early pain point is just managing having all these videos around. So I wanted to automate backup, at least to desktop, and then a server I control, or some third-party AWS service or whatever makes sense. Figure out what's the right thing there to let us keep the video footage around without cluttering up our devices. So yeah, I was thinking that's approximately the set of features I'll target for the first version to get this thing off the ground and shippable and downloadable. I'm not currently planning to build the iOS app in the short term. This is a phenomenal place if you would like to get involved. I don't currently own a Mac, and I'm kind of thinking that I'm going to try again to do Android development without one. I've tried this before, and it's certainly the platform choice that most people prefer. But the two things I'd like to try first are, there's a few remote Android Studio hosting providers that you can work remotely, which I think would be a great way for me to work, in terms of being able to not have to take a high-powered laptop with me everywhere I go. And at some point, I expect that, if I get that up and running, I'll expect I want to have kind of a local machine I'd like to revisit Ubuntu and set up a Linux box and see if I can get that lifestyle working for me again. If I have to, I'll buy a Mac, but yeah, we're gonna see how that goes. The other reason for this is that I remember when I was first getting started, I bought a Mac first because I wanted to do iOS development, and I tried to set up a Hackintosh. And it was a pain. I'm sure it still is, and I don't like that sort of obstacle for younger people to get involved. People who are, don't have a couple $1,000s to spend on a computer that is more than they otherwise would need. So, I'm trying to pave the way, provide guides and tutorials for how to do that. So we'll see. Once I get version 1 out the door, next year, I imagine early in the year, I'll start digging into the audio video engineering a little deeper. Actually thinking I'm going to start with sort of just post-processing of the video. It feels like that's where the really low-hanging fruit is, and that can include everything from audio, filtering the audio, sort of high pass, removing various background noise and stuff, figuring out what is the low-hanging fruit there, transcription, maybe. Well, we'll see. We'll see. I'm sort of gonna gauge the first pass of this by what's pretty easy to get integrated, and similarly, we'll start recording some audio, some videos ourselves on mobile, on Androids, and look to extract that functionality into multi-platform. Starting with Android and probably my Windows machine or Linux, to figure out what's the way to deal with these audio video streams in a cross-platform compatible way. And I think that will be an interesting technical deep dive. I think some other things I've thought about is like having a little timer that kind of indicates how you're doing on time, and speaker notes or sort of things that you want to make sure to cover that are sort of overlays on top of the videos you're recording. So yeah, this is the version that they'll start to dive deeper into this stuff. And that's about what I have planned for right now. That will take us through sort of early next year, and we'll revisit how we're doing. But essentially, version 1, going to focus on getting an app out the door, getting us to a minimum level of sort of like, hey, I think at the 1.0 milestone, a lot of that will be making sure that it's easy for someone else to get involved if they want to start using this as a template and using some of the things we're building and maybe contributing back to the project. Then once we have sort of that foundation in place, shifting over to like working with the audio video streams and figuring out what we can accomplish there, and with the recorder. And as we're going through all of this, we'll be looking to extract things out into common multi-platform, and then further into sort of library components that can be mixed and matched into different apps that need these things. And I think there'll also be a lot of tangential content to this, things that whether it's debugging, logging. Um, uh, we'll get into notifications and also